So hello everybody, welcome to this session where I'm going to be talking about this topic, understanding emotions, and we're going to explore these emotions that I've got on the slide here. This is part 2 of a short series. In session 1 we explored anger, frustration, fear, disappointment, hurt, understanding those emotions, understanding what action we can take, understanding what those emotions are possibly trying to tell us. So do check out that video. I've popped the link below this video. If you are watching live, just say hello, let me know you can see me and hear me. If you're watching the replay, just put hashtag replay. Interested in any comments, any thoughts you've got on this topic. I'm going to share some ideas, but you might have some different ideas. So do feel free to share them because your perspective could help somebody else. So let's get into it. In fact, before we get into it, before we talk about the emotions that I'm going to cover today, which include, where's my list? Discomfort, inadequacy. Actually, I've got them on the slide, haven't I? Let's just go back. Discomfort, inadequacy, overwhelm, loneliness, guilt, and shame. I invite you just to close your eyes for a moment and to just obviously only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. I invite you just to think about some good emotions you've experienced. Maybe remember a time when you experienced an emotion that felt good. Could be joy, happiness, could be awe, wonder. So just take a moment, close your eyes, imagine being in that place right now where you just feel those good feelings. Just have a sense of what you see in that environment, the sounds that you hear, the physical sensations of your body. Just immerse yourself in that experience as if you are there now. Feel how it feels to be in that place, which for you just generates those good feelings. So when you're ready, you can bring yourself back and open your eyes. Penny says, hi Simon. Hi Penny, nice to have you with us. So it's important to understand these emotions. We can empower ourselves by understanding our emotions by, actually let's just go back to me. Yeah, we can empower ourselves by understanding our emotions, being able to listen to emotions, make sense of our emotions, and take appropriate action. Because when we do that, that can significantly affect your energy. And when we don't pay attention to emotions, then the body can generate more emotions and can generate symptoms as a way of trying to get us to listen. So as I say, this is part 2, check out part 1. And I'm sharing some of the ideas of Tony Robbins and others. And one thing I mentioned, I talked about frustration last time. I forgot to mention one strategy for frustration, which is to forgive ourselves, okay? And forgiveness might also apply to some of the emotions that we talk about today. So the first emotion I want to talk about is discomfort. So discomfort is not necessarily an intense emotion, but it can cause us to feel restless, to feel out of sorts. The message of that emotion may be telling you that you're experiencing boredom, impatience, unease, some distress, some embarrassment. Solutions include, first of all, changing your state. Tony Robbins talks about changing our physiology, changing what we focus on, changing the language we use. So, for example, let's say someone's feeling bored. Their physiology might be kind of restless, low energy. And consider what happens if you just shift your posture, make your posture, a strong posture. I get people to do this exercise when I'm training them, of putting their hands in an upward V position. If they're able to do that, putting their feet apart and just standing in that position for a few seconds. And there's a study that was done where people were about to do a bungee jump, and they got one group of people to stand in that kind of power posture, and another group didn't do anything, and they compared how quickly both groups jumped, and they found the group that stood in the power posture jumped more quickly, I think 15 seconds on average, than the group that didn't do anything. So changing our physiology can make a difference to how we feel. If someone's feeling bored and frustrated, or bored, depressed, a bit low, then their physiology tends to be a bit hunched, a bit low. When we're feeling more focused, upbeat, our physiology, our posture is very different. So that's the first thing. Focus. What are we focusing on? If you're feeling bored, let's say, I know when I feel bored, especially when I was younger, I'd feel this sensation in my stomach. So it could change my focus. We can approach this in a playful way, for example, using visualization. I might visualizing myself drawing up energy through the ground, drawing energy from above, and just having that energy flowing through me. And that just changes my focus. It changes how I feel. And then we can change our language. If someone's saying, I'm bored, I'm sure you can remember a time, perhaps as a child, when you were just like, I'm so bored. And we can change our language. We can say, actually, my body is telling me that it's time to take some action, to do something different. So that's the first thing, change our state, our physiology, what we're focusing on, and our language. Second thing is to clarify what it is you want and why you want it. Is it some connection, some stimulation, some fun? And then step 3 is to take some action, to do something different. Could be a small action. I can remember when I was a student, I was learning to play the guitar, but I wasn't having any lessons. I didn't have any resources. We didn't have all these online courses that we have now. I didn't have any books to follow. And so I was just doing the same thing, and I was getting really bored of it. So we need to do something different. Now, for example, I'm learning to play the piano, and I've got an online course. I'm going to start having lessons soon, and that's a way of just challenging myself to make it more interesting. Okay, so let me know, what are your thoughts about discomfort? Is that something you can relate to? And which of those strategies resonate with you? So the next one is inadequacy. So when we have this emotion, it's often about feelings of unworthiness, that we feel we can't do something that we should be able to do. The message is that this emotion might be telling you that you don't presently have the skill necessary for the task you're trying to accomplish, and you might need some more information, some more understanding of that information, better strategies, more confidence that comes from having competence and resources. So some solutions. One is to ask yourself, am I really inadequate? Or actually, am I just lacking in some of those above things that I've just mentioned? Do I need to change my perception? Appreciate that this is a call to encourage you to take action to improve in this area. It's important to embrace the notion that you don't have to be perfect. You can grow and develop in this area where you feel there's a gap between your current ability and the possibility of how good you can be. I'm finishing a course that I'm doing called Mind Body Reconnect that was created by Claire Caldwell. And, there are There's a team of Claire and 2 others who are absolutely brilliant, amazing practitioners. And, they say, when I was starting out, I had the same self-doubt, and I just knew I need to practice what I was learning. Okay. And that brings me on to the next point. You can find a role model and either model them, i.e. study them and see what it is that they're doing to get the results they want, or get coaching from them if that's a possibility. Okay. I've got a colleague on my course who's actually having guitar lessons with someone who is in a band in Australia, who the band's well known in Australia, and this woman's having lessons from one of the people in the band, which I think is very cool. All right, so the next one, again, let me know, to what extent do you relate to that idea of maybe feeling inadequate in some area? If so, what of those steps that I've shared resonate? What is some action you can take to develop in that area? So let me know. So next one I want to talk about is overwhelm and feelings of overload. So this emotion is telling us that we're kind of feeling helpless, disempowered in some way. And the message is that it might be telling us that we need to re-evaluate what's most important to you in this moment. And to recognize that maybe you're trying to deal with too many things at once. One of the problems, one of the mistakes we make when we feel overwhelmed is to kind of feel like we've got to do everything right now, and we seem to pile it on, whereas actually we can spread things out. All right. So solutions, remember we can't do everything at once, and we may not need to do it all now. One strategy I find really helpful is to do what I call a brain dump. I was taught this by an entrepreneur called Ed Dale. And what he says is you literally allocate some time. He suggests 50 minutes, 50, but you can, if that's too long, you can just do a shorter period. But just write everything down that's in your head, your feelings, your thoughts, the tasks. You just write and write and write, and you'll get to a certain point where you think, oh, actually, that's everything. And he suggests you just sit for a little longer and you'll start to have more ideas. And when I've done this exercise, I found it particularly useful to do when I come back from holiday. Maybe I'm coming back to work after Christmas, and I need to just kind of get myself in order. So consider, this is what you do: you write everything down, then you put it to one side, have a break, then you come back to it and you start looking at it in terms of what are the tasks that I need to do, and you start to go through what I call the 5 Ds. Do it, delegate it, divide it, defer it, i.e. do it later, or delete it. And then we need to put those tasks into a list of priority and decide what's the most important thing to focus on first. If necessary, it can be useful to write the different tasks on separate pieces of paper and then start to put them in order so you can get a sense of which are the things that you need to do in which order. And then you pop them in your diary. Well, actually, this is when I'm going to do this task, then this task, then this task. So Penny says, love the idea of the brain dump. Yeah, me too. It's a really super strategy. It's really powerful. So I really encourage you to give it a go. And then the next thing is to take action. Tackle the first thing on your list and continue taking action. So the key is to focus on what you can control and to not focus on things you can't control. So again, if you're watching live or replay, just let me know what your takeaway is from that one. And can you relate to that? Feeling overwhelmed, feeling overloaded. So the next one I want to talk about is loneliness. Okay, this is emotion about feeling separate from others, apart. And the message is that this emotion is telling you that you have a need for connection. Now, obviously, this can be tricky if you have ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID, if your energy is limited, in which case it's really important to consider your options. For example, if you do have some capacity, then it's important to recognize that there are other people who are feeling lonely. Okay, so if you can reach out and make connection, maybe be proactive. It might be you can post in a Facebook group saying, I'd like to start a little group where we just connect once a week. And you can, it might be topic based. I was chatting to someone earlier who's in a knitting group. They meet online and they knit and chat. Okay. There's someone else I know used to go to one of those groups and it was called Stitch and Bitch. So, it might be topic based, or it might be just, you want to have some connection. I've talked about this before. I still connect with a couple of friends online on a fairly regular basis if we're not in a position to meet up face to face. And one of the things we always do is play this game called Puzz Grid. So check it out. So if your capacity is limited, it might be just asking someone to sit in the room with you, maybe holding your hand, if that feels like something that would be comforting. As I say, maybe set up a group. You could even set up a Zoom call where you just are in silence, but you're together. And if that sounds a little bit weird, consider I go to a meditation class sometimes, and that's exactly what we do. We're sitting in a room in silence. But there is actually something quite powerful, powerful about doing that. There seems to be something about being in connection with other people that makes the experience more profound. And I always sleep better when I go to a meditation class. Of course, we do have some connection in the tea break, but just consider, that's an option. That's my aunt who lives in Germany, in Berlin. There is I think there's a room, where is it, at Brandenburg Gate called, I think it's called the Peace Room or something. And it's a room where people go to just sit in silence. Okay. So you might even visualize being connected to others who are in the same boat. Okay, I shared that with someone and they said they found it really helpful just to lie in bed. They were, in the room on their own, but they just imagined connecting to other people in the same situation, and they did find it comforting. So again, let me know, what are your thoughts about that? What are your takeaways? What's some action you could take? So the next one I want to talk about is guilt. So guilt, this emotion is about regret and remorse in relation to something you have done, or unease due to something you're thinking of doing. So the message is that this emotion may be telling you that you are violating or are thinking of violating one of your standards. And it's a call to do something to correct it. So the solution might be to acknowledge that you have violated or are thinking of violating a standard you have for yourself. The next step is to cultivate forgiveness if it's something you have done, or even if it's something you're kind of tempted to do. This next step is to decide whether this behavior is something you want to avoid. And if so, use that guilt to motivate you to hold yourself to a higher standard. And as I say, it's really important to be compassionate to yourself if you do slip up. So the next and final one is shame. So guilt is feeling bad about something we've done, or that's so Penny's just said, what if it is false guilt? Okay, if you want to give me an example of that, Penny, do. But I kind of get what you're saying. My interpretation of what you're saying is you're feeling guilty about something that you shouldn't be feeling guilty about. In which case, I would really, challenge that perception. Okay, if you're saying to yourself, actually, I feel bad about doing this. Well, actually, I remember a time when I felt guilty about ending a relationship. And actually, that wasn't helpful because I did what I felt was the thing I needed to do. And I think ultimately it was in my best interest and in the best interest of my ex-partner, so that they could, be free to pursue a relationship that was a good fit. So Penny says from childhood trigger. Yeah. So then, I would perhaps engage in a conversation with that part of you that's feeling that way, and maybe adding, a different perspective. It might be to actually challenge that idea that part of you needs to feel guilty about that, and to put another perspective across. Without a very specific example, it's hard to kind of give you a concrete example of that, but hopefully you can apply what I've shared to that situation. If we're feeling guilty about something, like I was feeling guilty about ending that relationship, I need to start looking, well, actually, no, it was the right thing to do, and although it's going to be hard for that person and for me to begin with, in the long term, it's for the best. And so I had to just catch myself every time I was generating those feelings of guilt and shift to that perspective, maybe to be more pragmatic in the way I was thinking about it. Okay, but that's a very good point. So thanks for sharing that. So the last one I want to share is shame. So whereas guilt is feeling bad about something we've done, shame is more about the idea that I am bad or wrong, okay, as opposed to guilt that I've done something bad or wrong. So the message of shame may be that we are doing something that we feel is bad or wrong according to our values, or the perception that we have done something bad or wrong due to society's values, or we feel shame due to the response of others placing judgment on us. There's rejection, criticism, or ridicule. The solution, number one, is self-compassion. Number two, we need to check our perceptions. Do we agree with the values of society? Okay, I did think of an example of this earlier. At one point, some politicians were criticised for having dialogue with terrorists. But actually, that dialogue resulted in some positive outcomes, okay? But, there were other politicians who were criticising these politicians for having dialogue with terrorists. Personally, I feel like dialogue is how we move forward. That's not always the case. The dialogue doesn't always work, but it is, it has a positive intention. Okay, so we need to check our perceptions. Do we agree with the values that society is imposing on us? As I say, if you have done something wrong, that you feel bad or wrong, it's important to cultivate forgiveness. And again, use the shame to motivate you to hold yourself to higher standards if you feel like you have done something that you do feel some shame for. Personally, I think it's really important to let go of the shame. That sense of I am bad or wrong. I might have done something that I recognise isn't, good, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad person. So, there's a few thoughts about those different emotions. I'd love to know what your takeaways are. What are some actions you can take? So do let me know. Do leave a comment. Your comments help other people find this video. So thanks for your comments, for your interaction. Do check out my playlist if you're watching on YouTube. Just to let you know, next week I am offering resilience group coaching. There's no charge for next week. There's normally a monthly charge. So if you'd like to join, it's going to take place at 4:30 on a Wednesday. That's British summertime, and 9:30 on a Thursday. So the Wednesday suits people in the UK and people in America. The time on the Thursday suits people in the UK and also people in, Australia, perhaps New Zealand. So if you'd like to join for next week, and you'll also get access to the recordings for the rest of the month, then put the word group in the chat. So Penny says, takeaway, understanding our emotions, i.e. is empowering. Excellent. So thanks for sharing that. If you've got any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching. Keep going. Wishing you great health. Bye for now.